The Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, has prophesied a number of events which must occur before history can end. These events, which will occur in the end time, have as their most important of all events the return of the Son of Mary, Jesus, the Son of Mary, the true Messiah. And he's going to return not in downtown Chicago, but in Damascus. In Damascus. And there's another divinely appointed figure in Islamic eschatology. You may have heard of the Imam al-Mahdi, one of the supreme figures of the Shia, but also accepted by the Sunni. Imam al-Mahdi will be in Damascus when Jesus returns. He'll be in a masjid or a mosque. The prayer is about to take place. The Antichrist and the Israeli armed forces are outside. And then Jesus descends in the masjid. And the Imam recognizes him and says, "This is the Son of Mary." In much the same way that John the Baptist, standing in the river, when he saw Jesus, he said, "Here he is. This is the man you've been waiting for. This is the Messiah." And so history repeats itself. The Prophet said, Allah's blessings be upon him, about the Great War, otherwise known as Armageddon, but we have a different word for it. It's called the Malhama. It's going to be fought by an army which is going to come out of Medina. But Medina means city. So you have the Medina of Chicago, and you have the Medina of New York, and you have the Medina of London. But there's one city in the world which is known as Medina of the Prophet, Madinatun Nabi, which is in Saudi Arabia. So sometimes when the word Medina is used, it is confused with that Medina in Saudi Arabia. But in this particular case, it's the city. It does not identify the city. But the scholars who have studied the subject identify it as Damascus. That out of Damascus will emerge an army which is going to confront Rome. And in our last interview we did take up the subject of Rome. That there was a Rome which was in Rome, in Italy, which was pagan. And then Constantine took it to Constantinople. And that became the second Rome, which was Christian. And then subsequently, some centuries later, Rome then became Christian, discarding its pagan roots. And then when Constantinople was conquered in 1453, Rome then went to Moscow. So in the Quran, when the Quran was revealed, Rome was Byzantium. But prior to the Quran, Rome was in Italy, Rome. So we now have two Romes. We have one which is Eastern Christianity, Byzantium, which has Russia as its headquarters, and a man named Putin is the new emperor of Byzantium. When he visited Israel recently, he was hailed as the new emperor of Byzantium. And then we have the other Rome, which was pagan, and now is Roman Catholic and Protestant, the Western one. So we have to face an enemy called Rome, which is going to land in that area between Turkey and Syria. And when the armed forces land over there, then this army is going to come out of Damascus to face them. And that's a big war, which we will win. We'll defeat them. And when we defeat them, that Muslim army will then go on to conquer Constantinople. Some of the major events still awaiting to occur in history are the return of Jesus, the conquest of Constantinople, which obviously would be liberation from the control of NATO, and the defeat of a Western army in the area between Syria and Turkey. And all of these have Damascus as their central point. So Damascus does play a very central role in Islamic eschatology.
Thank you for clarifying that. At one point I thought you were talking about a Damascus army going to fight Rome, which is Russia, but you clarified that. One more question from Daring Dean's channel, from subscribers of his. How do we survive the coming wars? Can remote villages in the countryside guarantee the safety of Muslims from the upcoming destruction of the nuclear clash between Gog and Magog?
I think the people who are most vulnerable to be wiped out in the coming nuclear war are those resident in North America and Europe. They're likely to be wiped out. And that's because I believe the Zionists have already exploited modern Western civilization to get all that they needed to get from them. They've used them as guinea pigs to fight their wars for them. And now that Israel is poised to take over from the United States as the next ruling state in the world, it is becoming increasingly inconvenient for Israel to have this baggage on its shoulders, modern Western civilization. The modern Western man has a kind of a mysterious energy in him, intellectual energy. If you look at every single branch of knowledge, modern Western man has extended the frontiers of knowledge. If you look at the Olympic Games, modern Western man is winning all the medals. If you look at military power, modern Western man has the greatest military power in the world today. So there's some kind of a mysterious energy in modern Western man, and of course woman. And if modern Western man opens his eyes and begins to see the reality that he has been exploited and taken for a ride by the Zionists, he's being used now as a guinea pig. As Western man opens his eyes and begins to understand the reality, he is already emerging as a formidable threat, more formidable than Muslims. And so I believe the master plan is to get rid of modern Western man before his eyes open big enough to be able to understand and to constitute the gravest of all threats to Israel. The nicest way, the easiest way, the most effective way is to try to foment a clash between the two superpowers. So you have thousands of nuclear weapons being used, one against the other. And that'll be the end of modern Western civilization. What can we do? In Islam, we have the belief that life and death are in the hands of the one God. If He has ordained death, then nothing that we can do can prevent death. And if He has not ordained death, then no one can take our lives. It's called faith. And once you have that faith, you can continue your work. Regardless of what's happening in the world, you continue the struggle until the time comes for you to lay down your burden and go into the earth. But it is permissible for you to make a hijra or migration, to try to move from a place where there is greater danger to a place where there is greater security. And the most vulnerable place in the world to be today and for the next 20 years or so would be in the mega cities. The mega cities. So if you want to survive, your chances are much better if you get out of London and New York and Paris and Chicago and New Delhi and Karachi and Jakarta and go to the countryside. The more remote the countryside, the better. And produce your own food, because food is increasingly becoming contaminated, becoming more garbage than food. And produce your own food and become self-sufficient in food and in water. And this is your best way of surviving.
Words of wisdom, dear Sheikh. Let me move on. More questions.
Before you move on,
yes. Yes.
Are you still going to remain in London?
I am going to the countryside 2 or 3 times a week. I have found an oasis. There are videos on my channel just recently on farms. I'm trying very hard to get out, and I meet people in the city that are unhappy in the city. It's not easy to move to the countryside. It takes a new mental approach as well.
But before you move, find a wife, please. Don't go to the countryside alone.
Oh, inshallah, I wish. I wish. You never know. When it rains, it pours.
Okay, Boris.
Look, I just have a comment now. It's not a question. It was a comment left on a video, and it grabbed my attention regarding Syria. This is a clear-cut war for Israel. Nothing else. Syria is one army which can take care of Israel. Every American has to look into this angle. Who is benefiting? Neither Saudi or Syria nor America, only one country, Israel. It's either luck for them or it is well played by them.
Yes, I think this is correct. The Zionists are at the root of the uprising. They're the ones who planned it long years in advance. But what is missing in that analysis is that Syria is not just another country for them. This is do or die for them. They must succeed in Syria, even if they have to open all the gates of hell. And that's about to happen, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I get to interview a few people, and they're very often against the Western interference in Syria. But they won't point a finger at Israel or the Zionists. They have to be kept out. You can talk about the CIA and the Americans and Hillary Clinton. That's no problem. But don't mention Israel or the Zionist plot. Okay. More questions, sir. I would like to know if he thinks Turkey has been secretly encouraging and supporting the anti-Assad terrorists from the beginning. I think this is from Coriana Green. I think she's asking, you know, how long have the Turkish people been, or government been, facilitating the insurrection?
I think that the Turkish government I prefer to give them the benefit of the doubt and to think well of them in respect of their hearts, that their hearts are not corrupted. It is that the minds are brainwashed and that they're being used and manipulated in much the same way that modern Western civilization was used and manipulated for centuries. And only now is Western man opening his eyes and beginning to understand and realize true story. So too with the Turkish government. I believe that there was a sophisticated effort of brainwashing, and that at the heart of that effort of brainwashing was a Sufi religious movement based in, which has its headquarters in the United States. They have played a very sinister role